Assalamu alaikum once again and welcome to the Practical English Brain. Let me begin with the name of Allah, who is very kind and merciful. Since I've noticed that using simple past tense and present perfect tense could be sometimes confusing for many people. Instead of simple past tense, they use present perfect. Instead of present perfect, they use simple past tense. So I decided to show you the differences between these two tenses, when to use simple past tense and when to use present perfect tense. So stay with me and inshallah you will enjoy the video. So for example, if you have an interview and they ask you what's your qualification, I've noticed a lot of people say I was graduated from, no, don't use simple past tense. Say, I've done my master's, I've done my PhD, I've done my bachelor, or I've graduated from university. Okay, so try to use present perfect tense. If you want to talk about a repeated action in the past, try to use present perfect tense. I've been to India a few times. So when you talk about repeated action, that happened before now several times or a few times or many times at unspecific times, use present perfect tense. So do not use simple past tense. Let me say, I've done my master's. Do not say, I did my master's in 2005 if the question is that, what's your qualification? Try to use present perfect tense. So here, when you talk about repeated action, try to use present perfect tense. Do not use simple past tense. Don't say, I went to India several times last year or many times last year or a few times. So do not use simple past tense when you talk about a repeated action in the past. I've been to India a few times, several times, many times, once, twice, or for example, I've watched that movie several times, a few times, many times. For example, you can say, I've taught that system several times, a few times, many times. Next, if you want to talk about an action that started in the past, comes to present time continuously, and may or may not continue in the future with the prepositions for and since. Now, there's a point over here. I'm going to be clarifying this point while recording a video about the differences between present perfect and present perfect continuous tense. So here I don't want to go into too much details, but I just want to tell you this. If you want to talk about an action that started in the past, comes to present time, and may or may not continue in the future, you can use, mainly you can use present perfect continuous tense, but there are three verbs. Teach, the second form of which is taught, and the third form is also taught. Live, lived, lived, and work, worked, worked. So when these three action verbs are used in present perfect or present perfect continuous tense, in that case, both tenses have the same meanings. It means that the action of teaching started in the past, comes to present time, may or may not continue in the future. So exceptionally, these three action verbs can be used in present perfect tense. Now, if you use the preposition for, then you can mention a sort of time duration for 10 years, for many years, for several years, for a few years, for 3 years. Or if you mention since, then you mention the starting point of an action in the past, like since 2010, since 2001, since last January, since February, since, if it's, for example, a short duration, since this morning, since 2 years ago, since a month ago, since an hour ago. These kind of time durations could be used after since, this preposition. Okay, but there's a difference. Now, if you say, I taught English for 10 years, if you use simple past tense, it means that the action of teaching does not come to present time. You talk about the duration of an action that started and ended in the past. But with present perfect tense, or present perfect continuous tense, you talk about the kind of actions that start in the past, continuously come to present time, may or may not continue in the future. I hope you got this point. So now, one more thing. If your main verb is a state verb, if it's not an action verb, then you can talk about the duration of a state using present perfect tense. I have known him for many years. I have always loved my country. For example, I have liked pizza since I was a young boy, for example. Or you may say, this car has belonged to me for many years, for a few years. So now, if you talk about a state that existed in the past, still exists at present time, and may or may not exist in the future, mainly present perfect tense can be used to talk about that kind of situation. Okay, but keep in mind that your main verb in this case should be a state verb, not an action verb. But here in simple past tense, I knew him when he was a child. So now the state of knowing does not exist at present time. I mean, the way it does here, like when we use present perfect tense. So I know him in the past, I still know him, and in the future, I may forget all about him, or I may, the state may exist in the future as well. But here, I knew him when he was a child. So then, we got separated. He went somewhere, he went abroad, and he became like, an adult, and now if I face him, I may not recognize him. So I knew him when he was a child. It means that the state of knowing existed at a specific time in the past and does not exist anymore. At present time, the state of knowing does not exist. So I hope you see the clear difference now. And if you want to mention repeated actions in the past that happen like at unspecific times, but within a duration of time, you can mention a duration of time. That's possible. For that kind of actions, you can again use present perfect tense, not simple past tense. I've taken 3 exams in the past few weeks. Sorry. Or for example, you say, I've been to Pakistan several times, 3 times, twice, once, many times in the past 2 years, in the past 3 years. So you can mention that kind of duration time. Inside the duration time, an action has happened, repeatedly several times on specific times, but you can mention the past time duration using present perfect tense. That's possible. But we cannot use simple past tense to talk about, these kind of repeated actions and mention period of time. And finally, if you see a kind of physical change in someone or in something, commonly present perfect tense is used in that case. For example, you lived in this city, and 10 years ago, you left this city and you went abroad. You went to another country. And after 10 years, you came back and you see that there are a lot of changes. So you say, the city has become very modern. The city has become, very beautiful. So you talk about kind of physical change. So in this case, you do not use simple past tense. The city became. If you see became, again, you talk about something in the past. Okay. You do not talk about the kind of changes that you notice at present time. So I hope now the differences between present perfect and simple past tense are clear, and I hope that you won't be confused while using these 2 tenses in your spoken or in your written English. But don't forget that soon I'll be recording another video about the differences between present perfect and present perfect continuous tense. This much is enough for now. Have a great time and see you later.